kind of fell ill on a weekend, as I recall, right? Wasn't it a Sunday, I think?
Yeah, it started a little bit earlier. I had I thought I had a sinus infection, and I just wasn't feeling up to par. I called in sick for work over the weekend, um, and quite frankly, my wife's going to have to fill you in after that because I don't remember the remainder of March and April.
Yeah. So yeah, your hard drive is wiped clean of 2 entire months, right?
Yeah, yeah. The end of March, all of April. I call it becoming aware. That began again probably the very last days in April or the beginning of May,
Right.
and I was on the trach at that point, and the ventilator. Um, I couldn't speak, had a lot of frustration and anxiety in not being able to communicate. Uh, Fortunately, at that point, I had been transferred to Life Care over in Dallas, Life Care Hospital.
And that was when that transfer happened. That was after 8 weeks on a ventilator, right?
Almost, yeah, just
Almost, right? I think you're in your 7th week when
correct.
the decision was made for you to move over there.
Right.
Well, just real quick, as I checked Sue's text just to make sure. So March 22nd was the day you went to Baylor Grapevine, and hospitals were already under the deal where she could not go in with you. You walked into the ER by yourself.
Okay, if that's what she said.
Well, yeah, well, she walked in with you, but then when
Yeah.
you went behind closed doors in the ER, that's the moment that the
Right.
separation occurred, and she was not
Right.
able to see you for a couple of months
Right.
in
Right.
person.
Right.
And then as she tells the story, it was 24 hours later. That's how rapidly apparently you went downhill in the beginning. 24 hours later, you were put on the ventilator.
Yeah, she said something about 104 fever and rapid decline and pneumonia, and so I was there, but I'm getting the story secondhand.
Yeah. Talk to me about the first moment you were somewhat lucid after all of this time had passed. And I have to imagine I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, which is impossible, but laying there and having a moment of lucidity and beginning to wrap your mind around where am I? I'm curious if you wondered what day it is, what time it is, what was in your head?
Um, I guess I had already understood that I was in a hospital, that I was, on a ventilator. The issues were not being able to communicate with the staff there. Just little things like the I had a blanket on and it was making me too warm, and I couldn't draw anyone's attention to try to communicate with them to remove the blanket and just use a sheet. So I would be uh, getting this anxiety attack over being too warm. And I don't know what the period of time would go by before somebody would finally come by and realize what I needed and took care of me. The people at Life Care were very compassionate, very caring, but making myself understood was the greatest frustration for me.
Right. And so all of the rest of March, April, and then May, once you were on the ventilator and days turned into weeks, you were essentially out of it, right? What little I know about the ventilator process, there's a lot of sedation involved, and you're pretty much out, right?
Right.
So there was no sense of time in that first 5, 6, 7 weeks before you were transferred. There's nothing there.
Correct. And then once the beginning of May came around, like I said, I had these issues communicating, but they worked very quickly with me to get me off the ventilator. That was the purpose of going to Life Care, and they did an excellent job with it. They started working on inserting things in my trachea that allowed me to breathe room air, and they would wean me slowly, an hour a day, next day 2 hours, 4 hours, and so on. And finally, it was my daughter's birthday. It was May 15th that they installed a speech valve, and it let me speak that morning. So I was able to surprise her on my birthday, being able to talk. Made her cry.
That is unbelievable. So was that something they put in and left in, or it was literally something just for that day because of the occasion?
Again, it was a weaning process
Okay.
because I couldn't be on the ventilator, but they weren't sure that my lungs were strong enough to tolerate a long-term period. So
Sure.
I would be able to have that speech valve for a couple of 3 hours a day, and then the next day, a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And I think I finally got off of the ventilator the 20th or the 21st of May, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I was breathing room air. Well, I was on oxygen, and it was another 4 days before I could completely breathe room air.
Can you describe for people and for me, physically, what you felt like in those days that have led up now to today? It sounds as though things are getting incrementally and very slightly maybe better every single day, working toward a goal of going home, obviously. But those first few days when you were lucid, when you began to understand what's going on in your body, so people can understand.
Um, in the very beginning of May, I I did not have use of either hand. My left hand rapidly improved till today. I can feed myself. I can maneuver using my left hand. My right hand is the right arm below the elbow is virtually immobile, but I am starting to get some increased movement in my fingers. So there's some hope there that that's going to improve, and the time frame on that is anyone's guess. I've spoken to therapists and physicians, and I've gotten estimates of complete rehabilitation of the right arm to be 6 months to a year. And there was speculation as to what caused that. The process of what they called proning, which was turning me back and forth
Yeah.
in order to relieve the issues with the pneumonia, they thought was one issue. The other thing that they're discovering is that COVID affects nerves as well. So so that could be an issue with my arm and my feet as well.
I was going to say in our discussion before this Zoom call, you had told me about issues with your feet. So you don't have total sensation down in your feet.
Correct. Yeah, there's different uh, parts of my feet. The toes and everything are virtually numb. The heel is okay. The arch of the foot, there's feeling there, but there's a little movement in the ankles. That's the reason I've been measured up for these ankle supports, and that's going to assist me in walking. And hopefully I'll get those next week.
Billy, what kind of guy were you before all of this happened? You and I met at our Coffee for Veterans, obviously last fall. We saw each other in the weeks prior to you getting sick. As you and I joke, we ran into each other at a doctor appointment because your wife and I were both having our knees looked at. But what kind of guy were you? I know you're a husband, you're a dad, obviously, a hardworking guy. You work at American. Were you relatively healthy before this happened?
Well, I was. To be honest, I was overweight. I had high blood pressure, but besides that, if I had cleaned up my act and become less sedentary, I would have been in better shape. But there are people on the internet in reading my story that have said that my issues with COVID is all because of underlying physical conditions. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true. But the bottom line with the COVID is what I would like to remind people to do is wear a mask, because you don't know who you're going to run into that may have underlying conditions. And if you're asymptomatic, you could pass it on to them, or one of their family members who will pass it on to them.
Right.
I think that's the bottom line issue with masks. I don't think that the government or anyone is trying to remove your freedoms. I think the issue of business openings and closings, there are people who are a lot smarter than me who would be able to address that. But I think that everything, the most important thing that people can do is wear a mask when you're out in public or in close contact with other people.
Right. Were you able to in any way figure out where you may have come in contact and gotten sick, or just don't really know?
No, I have no idea whatsoever.
Really?
It may have been at work. It was, if it was somebody that it was asymptomatic, because there was no reports of anyone coming down with the virus prior to my infection.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I blame myself a little bit. I took the issue kind of lightly, and if I knew then what I know now, I would have been taking more precautions, and maybe I wouldn't have lost this third of a year.
Right. Um, Take people inside what your daily life is right now. You're in a long-term care facility now. You're in Grapevine, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as we sit here and have this talk, what is Billy's goal tomorrow? What will you do? Do you do exercises? Do you, I think you had told me you walk down the hallway. That's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, it is. Tomorrow, I just have one therapy session. Normally during the week, I have 3 to 4 therapy sessions, up to 3 hours total between physical therapy and occupational therapy. They're showing me basic things all over again: how to maneuver in a bathroom, how to maneuver in and out of a bed, and the physical therapists are dealing with my improved endurance and strength. I practice walking up and down the hallway. My greatest accomplishment so far is walking 107 feet, which is quite the thing compared to what was it, slightly more than a month ago, where it took 2 therapists to lift me to my feet so I could stand for only 10 seconds.
And that was a big deal then, right?
Oh yeah, they wanted to film it once again, and it was one of the first things I put on Facebook, and scores of my friends and family and acquaintances all commented on it on Facebook, and it was overwhelming to me how much support that people had considered throwing behind me with their prayers and just thoughts about me.
8 weeks on a ventilator, you come out, you learn about the passage of time, you learn about how difficult your spot is. How do you stay positive?
Uh, it was the little improvements all along the way. It was the um, not that I want to downplay everything that Baylor Scott and White here in Grapevine did for me when I was in the ICU, but I just don't remember it. I'm
Right.
so grateful to those people, but I can talk about my experience at Life Care in Dallas, and they were incredibly encouraging and almost cheerleaders. There was one nurse that hadn't seen me for 4 or 5 days after I began speaking, and she just got so excited. She was jumping around in the doorway to my room, uh, exclaiming that, I was able to talk again. Uh, but it, even just little improvements, when I was finally able to stand for a minute, they marked that as a milestone. When I was able to sit up in a chair for 2 hours, they marked that as a milestone. And these little encouragements and improvements were ways that it kept me from becoming depressed about things. I could see that somewhere along the line, I was going to eventually, not that I didn't love those people, I wanted to get out of there.
Yeah.
And the transfer back here to Grapevine was another terrific step for me. And as we speak today, I got 20 days to go. That's the target.
Give me the date again.
July 17th.
Not that you've been thinking about that date every single minute.
Every single minute since the physician here, Dr. Miller, told me that that was my projection. Now he's cautioned me that could slide either way, and
Sure.
and I understand that completely. That's has something to do with how hard I work and how I'm able to improve. But I just like to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel and know it's not a train.
Have you been outside?
For a very brief period of time when I was in Dallas. The head physician there allowed the therapist to bring me outside for it was about a half hour or so, and
Wow.
it was remarkable, the sensation of the sun on my face. I hadn't felt that for so long, and it's not a practical thing to move me around that much, or to take me
Right.
outside. So I understand that, but I'm looking forward to be able to do that in a couple of weeks.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers for a back porch and a cold beer when the time is right for you.
I prefer
Right.
the bourbon, but yes.
Well, Bert, whatever your choice, you have earned it without question.
Thank you, sir.
Billy, thank you for sharing your story.
All
Your
right.
your family can't wait to get you home. We know that. We know you can't wait to get there, but it sounds like your spirit and your attitude is exactly where it needs to be on a journey that has been nothing short of remarkable. It's not every day that we get to sit and speak with somebody who spent 8 weeks on a ventilator and has come out the other side.
Yeah, yeah. It's really gratifying. Like I said, I'm overwhelmed by uh, uh, the uh, the incredible support and prayers that people have sent in my direction. Um, I I am a church going kind of guy, but in the past I've kind of discounted the praying for people, but I will never do that in the future. It's a real thing, Doug. It truly is.
And that's a perfect place to leave it, my friend.